G'day, I'm Dr. Philip Button from the Food Microbiology Academy. Now, over the next five sessions, five video sessions, I want to run through the basics of HACCP and GMP, so good manufacturing practice for food quality, and HACCP for food safety. So over the next five videos in this series. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road with the first session, which is introducing HACCP. I'll share my screen and then we'll kick off. So there we go. Now, this was actually a lecture that I gave. So the whole thing was a lecture that I gave back in May 2011. Lecture 8 and in the food manufacture subject at RMIT University in Melbourne. So this is the lecture outline. So this is for the entire series of 5 webinars. So first of all, we'll be going through the principles of HACCP. Then, what are the actual hazards to the safety of consumers in food manufacture? Then, particularly in the context of dairy product manufacture, looking at the implications of poor GMP. First of all, what is HACCP? Some of you may know, some of you may have an idea, and some of you may be thinking, no, HACCP, what is that? So HACCP refers to hazard analysis critical control points. And the most important thing to remember is that it's a preventive system, not reactive. So whereas normal standard quality control procedures are reactive in nature, if there's an issue, then the system reacts to that. Whereas HACCP is preventive. So it works to prevent issues happening in the first place. It's a management tool which is used to protect the food supply against all kinds of hazards. So while biological, so microbiological are the most common, also chemical and physical hazards though are also covered within the scope of HACCP. And it's important that it is a management tool, so it's a tool that's used to manage any risks to consumer health. Like anything though, it's absolutely critical to remember that it's not zero risk. So it can't guarantee, nothing can guarantee anything. There's no guarantees in anything, is there really? So just remember that, yes, HACCP minimizes extremely the risk of an occurrence occurring, but it's not zero risk, so it doesn't actually eliminate. So just remember that there could be situations where incidents do occur. So just to reiterate, it's designed to minimize, absolutely minimize, but not eliminate the risk of food safety hazards. HACCP had its origins back in the 1960s when it was used in the US space program. And if you can, you think about astronauts going into space and the absolute importance of food safety in those situations, then you can understand that. How important it actually is, because, well, you can imagine if there was sickness or foodborne disease or leading to death in the space shuttle. Now that would be quite a difficult situation to handle. So subsequent to that, it's been adopted by many food processors, the US government, for example, and like in Australia and New Zealand, while FSANZ actually says that there needs to be a food safety program for to ensure food is safe, it doesn't actually stipulate HACCP, but the requirements that it actually says in the procedure are best served by the HACCP program. So these are the principles of HACCP, where it starts by conducting a hazard analysis in order to identify what sort of preventive measures can be can be taken. So it is important that you look at every step from as soon as the raw materials arrive in your manufacturing facility until the product actually leaves. So everything from when the raw materials arrive right through to when the product leaves your facility. But then if it's in transit and it's still under your responsibility, well, then that distribution chain needs to be included in your HACCP analysis as well. So you identify the hazards, then you identify critical control points in the process. So we're just giving an overview now, and later on in subsequent webinars, subsequent videos in this series, we'll be going into these in detail. So you identify the critical control points within your manufacturing process, then establish critical limits for those hazards that are at those particular points in your manufacturing process. Then you need to monitor each of those critical control points within your manufacturing process. And if they vary, exceed those critical limits, then you need to have a plan in place to establish some sort of corrective actions to bring them back within the critical limit, and then a verification procedure to ensure that that has happened. And then, just like all safety and quality management systems, it's important to have a procedure of record keeping and documentation. So in the case of HACCP, hazards refer to any conditions or contaminants in food which can actually cause illness or injury. So it's important to remember that it doesn't refer to undesirable conditions or contaminants such as insects, hair, general filth or spoilage, economic fraud, or any violations of regulatory food standards that aren't directly related to safety. So some of these, of course, may result in illness or injury. If they do, then that's when they would be considered within the HACCP system. But if they don't, and they're just undesirable, or it's a contaminant which results in a quality issue, then it's not considered within the HACCP management system. So the first step is a hazard analysis of your entire process. This starts by identifying the hazards by listing every potential hazard at each operational step in the process. So as I mentioned before, right through from when the raw materials are received in your facility, right up until release of the finished product, or release of the finished product from your responsibility, whether that's out of your manufacturing facility or once it gets delivered to a distribution center, for example. And it's important to remember all potentially significant hazards must be considered. So if something may just, even if there's a small chance that a particular point in your processing may result in a significant hazard, then it has to be included. Then you go through and evaluate those hazards, and if you identify that it's reasonably likely to occur and it's likely to result in an unacceptable risk to consumers, then that hazard must be controlled. What are hazards? Well, most of what we're going to be talking about, because HACCP is by and large for microbiological hazards, but that's not diminishing the absolute importance of chemical hazards or physical hazards. So we'll be delving into the microbiological hazards in a lot of detail in a future video, but here just want to go through chemical hazards, which include natural toxins, so mycotoxins, aflatoxins, and then Ciguatera and things like that out of seafood. Chemicals, which like cleaning chemicals, for example, from the manufacturing environment, pesticides or drug antibiotic residues that are from the agricultural environment, and unapproved food and color additives, or just unapproved additives in general, which might pose or would pose a risk because they haven't been approved. And then there's decomposition, which results in safety only. So in that particular case, if we have some compound which is decomposing into another one. Now, physical hazards all are about the actual physical presence of like the presence of a physical material. So if there's metal, glass, wood, or a sharp needle or pin or something like that, those are physical hazards that can find their way into foods, causing a physical hazard. And here is the last slide, which we're going to consider in this particular first video on HACCP. So hazard control measures. Now, these are actions and activities that we can use to actually eliminate the food safety hazard or reduce it to an acceptable level. So that can be bacterial, parasitic, viral, chemical, or physical types of hazards. And these are measures that we can take, as it says, to reduce or eliminate. Now, remember, in this case, elimination means not having it enter the process in the first place. So that's not actually using a control measure which will reduce to an extent which is undetectable, or reduce it to a level that you're anticipating can eliminate. Eliminate will be not even having it there in the first place. So not having a particular type of process or operation or material or something like that, which can introduce a hazard into the whole system. Whereas if it's reducing to an acceptable level, well, in this case, it could be something that that can't be avoided, but you're like certain bacteria, for example, you don't know necessarily where they're going to come from, when they're going to be present and at what level, but you can have thermal processing, high pressure processing, something like that, which will ensure that those are reduced to an acceptable level, which is usually zero or close to zero through heat or high pressure or so on. So there we go. Thank you very much for your attention for this video. It was great to have you here, and look forward to you joining us on the next. There we go. Just unshared, and look forward to you joining us on subsequent videos. Yeah, so I'm Dr. Philip Button from the Food Microbiology Academy in Melbourne, and thanks very much, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks very much, See you around. Cheers.